The village's bakery sat quiet in the dead of night, its windows dark, its ovens cold. For a week, something had been coming after hours. The owner blamed foxes at first, then teenagers. But foxes didn't unlock doors, and teenagers didn't leave nothing behind but crumbs and sticky handprints smeared all over the glass. Tonight, the street was empty. No cars, no footsteps, just the hum of a single street lamp and the faint, sweet smell that never truly left a place like this. Something watched from across the road. A small figure lingered in the shadows, barely separate from them. Its skin was dull green, mottled from weeks of hiding. Its eyes reflected the bakery window like coins dropped into darkness. A dark hood covered its head, pinning back its ears. The Gretchen tilted its head. Something was different tonight. It crossed the street without a sound and went straight for the front door. The lock surrendered almost instantly, metal whispering open beneath clever fingers. The Gretchen slipped inside and froze, listening. Nothing stirred except the old clock's ticking. Satisfied, it padded forward, claws clicking softly on tile. The counter was still broken from the last visit. Glass lay swept aside, but the scent lingered, thick and heavy. Irresistible. Sugary buns sat behind the damaged display case, glazed and waiting, like they had been left on purpose. The Gretchen sniffed the air, then it grinned. The smell was hypnotizing. One thin arm slid through the gap, fingers closing around a donut dusted in pink sugar. It bit down eagerly, teeth sinking into softness. It licked its lips, a delighted hiss escaping its throat. "Oh, do try to savor it," a voice said from the dark. "It'll be your last for a while." The Gretchen shrieked and spun. Harlan stepped out from behind the ovens, waving, coat blending into shadow, eyes calm and sharp. In his hand, something metallic glinted faintly. "You!" the Gretchen snarled, sugar spraying from its mouth. "Cage man!" It turned and leapt for the door, but it didn't make it. The floor was alive when it landed. Runes flared beneath its feet, igniting in pale blue light. The tiles locked, the air thickened, and the Gretchen slammed into an invisible wall like an insect caught in amber. It clawed and screamed, but every movement slowed further, dragged down by forces it didn't understand. Harlan shook his head. Same mistake every time. You all follow the sugar. You never check the room. The cage unfolded with practiced ease, bars snapping together around the trapped creature. The Gretchen thrashed, rattling the metal, but the runes held long enough. When the light faded, it was helplessly secured. Before leaving, Harlan tore a page from a small notebook and placed it neatly on the counter, weighed down with a sugar jar. "It's done. You won't be bothered again. H." Outside, the night swallowed him as he carried the cage to his car. The Gretchen hissed under the canvas, then growled as the engine started. Harlan didn't look back at the bakery. He drove toward roads that led nowhere, toward hidden lifts and sinking floors, toward the depths where sweetness never reached. Another thief contained, another hunger locked away. And somewhere deep underground, the prison cavern waited, ready to receive one more dream of sugar and light, slowly fading into the dark. 6 months earlier, Harlan arrived just before dawn with a fresh catch. It took 3 nights to catch. A sneaky youngster with a taste for sherbet. The shack looked the same as it always had, rotting wood, rusted hinges, nothing to suggest it led anywhere at all. He parked, cut the engine, and listened. The caged Gretchen in the back of the car stirred beneath its canvas, sensing depth, sensing others. He dragged the cage inside and sealed the door behind him. The air smelled wrong, sharp, metallic, like old fear scraped raw. He frowned but stepped onto the lift platform anyway. The floor began to descend. At first, there was only the familiar groan of machinery and the steady hum of power running far below the earth. Then came the noise. Scratching. Not one set of claws, but many. The walls shuddered. Something slammed into the lift cage hard enough to rock it. Harlan spun, hand already reaching into his coat, just as a shape burst from the darkness. Small, green, eyes wild with panic and hunger. A Gretchen, then another, and another. They poured out of maintenance tunnels, cracks in the stone, places that should have been sealed. Some leapt for the rising shaft, others clawed at the walls, shrieking as they scrambled upward toward the surface. "Back!" Harlan shouted, activating the runes etched into the lift frame. Light flared, and 2 Gretchens were thrown clear, bodies slamming into stone. But more replaced them instantly. They climbed over each other, screeching with frantic joy. They chanted as they climbed, "Up, up, sweet air, sweet world." One latched onto Harlan's coat. Another sank its teeth into the cage bars, rattling them violently. Harlan struck one aside, then another, but there were too many. Thin arms, grasping fingers, kicking legs, mouth snapping inches from his face. The lift kept descending. Harlan slammed his fist into the emergency seal, but the control panel sparked uselessly. The system was locked into its root. The creatures had broken it. The Gretchens clambered up the wall out of reach. The last thing he saw before the doors closed was a flood of green bodies clawing upward, escaping into the world above. Then the lift hit bottom. The doors slid open onto deafening silence. The main chamber lights flickered weakly. Several were completely dead. Cages hung open along the walls, chains snapped or twisted apart. The air was thick with the smell of blood and iron and stone dust. "Stan?" Harlan called. No answer. He stepped off the lift, looking around cautiously. Stan lay sprawled near the intake rail, one arm bent at a wrong angle, his uniform shredded. Tiny claw marks scored his chest and face, dried dark against the floor. One eye was swollen shut. The other stared blindly at nothing. Harlan knelt sharply. "Stan, stay with me, buddy." Stan coughed, a wet, broken sound. His fingers twitched weakly, leaving streaks of blood on Harlan's sleeve. "They learned," Stan whispered. Not just stealing anymore." Harlan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "How many got out?" he asked. Stan's mouth trembled into something like a smile. "Enough." The cavern groaned around them, chains swaying gently in empty space. Above them, somewhere far beyond the stone, the world was waking up, and it had no idea what was coming. Stan survived, barely. Harlan saw him as far as the medical ward carved into the upper rock layers. He was unconscious when they took him away, his body wrapped and braced, and his words already echoing in Harlan's head. They learned. Harlan did not stay. There was too much to do. He took to the road, checking every forest and town for tracks. By the time he returned the next day, the facility no longer looked wounded. Broken chains had been replaced. Runes reforged into the stone glowed faint and steady. Empty cages had been hauled back into position, scrubbed clean of blood. The cavern was quieter than before, controlled, disciplined. He didn't like it. At the intake platform, someone new waited. She stood straight despite the depth, clipboard held tight against her chest. Blonde hair pulled back neatly, spectacles perched low on her nose as she read and reread a list she already knew by heart. "You must be Harlan," she said, pushing the glasses up quickly when she noticed him. "I'm Elaine. I'll be overseeing operations until Stan recovers." She offered a hand. Harlan hesitated, then shook it. "So you're just temporary?" he asked. Her smile flickered, hopeful. That depends. She cleared her throat and gestured to the control room. We've had developments. The call board was lit like a fever. Dozens of red indicators pulsed across the map. Towns, villages, hamlets stretching for miles in every direction. Names scrolled past faster than the system could clear them. Suite thefts, break-ins, creatures sighted, scratching at night. They started less than 6 hours after the breach. Harlan stared at the map. They didn't scatter, he said slowly. They coordinated. Elaine glanced at him, admiration and fear mixing behind her lenses. That's what I thought. I hoped you'd say something else. Harlan exhaled through his nose. Hope's expensive down here. He reached for his coat. How many hunters do we have active? He asked. Elaine hesitated. Including you? Yes. 3 in close proximity to here. Harlan's jaw clenched. Then we start triangulating, he said. Protect the children first. Bakery second. Anything with sugar. Elaine nodded quickly, already writing. I'll reroute containment teams and... She stopped when she realized he was watching her. Yes? She asked. They didn't just escape, Harlan said. They planned this. We need alternative containment measures. The cavern lights flickered faintly, like something was breathing deep below. Above them, phones kept ringing, new cases arising. And somewhere in the world, Gretchens were no longer stealing quietly. They were taking what they claimed as theirs. Harlan took the worst calls first, as he always did. While Elaine coordinated teams and rerouted what little help they had, Harlan chose the places marked in black on the map. The ones where children had gone silent, where entire shops had been stripped bare in minutes, where witnesses reported more than one creature moving together. He didn't waste time. Within an hour, he was already on the road. A sweet warehouse on the outskirts of town had been torn open. Its loading doors bent inward like soft metal. Syrup and wrappers coated the ground, crunching beneath Harlan's boots as he stepped inside. They were still there. 3 Gretchens clung to the rafters, feeding, their green skins slick with glaze. They chittered to one another confidently, laughing. Harlan didn't announce himself. He drew the taser stick from inside his coat. It looked harmless. Thin, telescoping metal, dull silver, no runes visible. He flicked his wrist, and it extended with a soft click, humming faintly as it came alive. One of the Gretchens sniffed the air. Hunter. But it was too late. The taser stick cracked against its chest. White blue light exploded through the creature's body. It shrieked as its limbs locked, muscles seizing hard enough to fling it from the rafters. It hit the floor twitching, smoke curling from its fingers. The other 2 scattered, but Harlan moved fast. He swept the stick low, catching one across the legs. The current surged, dropping it mid-run. A rune disc skidded across the syrup-slick floor and sprang upward into a cage, just as the creature collapsed into it. The 3rd reached the door. Harlan hurled the stick at the last moment. It struck between the shoulders. The Gretchen screamed once before its body locked and pitched forward, skidding across the ground. Harlan was already there, snapping restraints into place. No words, no warnings, just brutal efficiency. By dawn, 4 towns were quiet. The back of Harlan's vehicle rattled with cages. The captured Gretchen slumped inside, bodies still trembling from repeated shocks. Their eyes followed him now, not with mockery, but fear. The taser stick rested in his hand, its hum steady and patient. He dropped off his haul, then took a few hours' rest. Hunting was easier at night. How many have we retrieved so far? Harlan asked as he entered, startling Elaine. She pushed back her spectacles shyly and answered, including the 6 you brought back. 13. Harlan groaned and headed straight for the lift. Elaine watched him leave, then returned to her notes. He took 4 quick cases that were all in the same village, catching 2 in the same barn. The 5th call was worse. A village school. Scratches on classroom doors. Sweet wrappers smeared with saliva. A child found hiding under a bed, terrified, whispering about green hands and snapping teeth. Harlan didn't set any traps. He went hunting. He found it in an abandoned warehouse. The Gretchen suddenly lunged from the boiler room, feral and desperate. Harlan stepped into the attack, driving the taser stick straight into its throat. The current surged. The creature convulsed violently, claws scraping sparks from the floor before it collapsed in a shaking heap. "You don't get mercy," Harlan said quietly. "You were already spared once." He caged it and slung it in the back of the car with the rest. When Harlan returned to the facility, his coat was torn and sticky with sugar. Elaine stood at intake, spectacles fogged slightly as the cages rolled past. "How many?" she asked. "Not enough," Harlan replied. She hesitated. "Did you try to reason with them?" Harlan met her eyes. "They don't want peace," he mocked. "They want candy and chocolate." The cages locked into the rail system and began their descent, chains rattling as they vanished into the depths. Harlan looked at the map again as he turned back toward the lift. The calls were still coming in. Harlan groaned. There was work to be done. The first alleyway stank of old sugar and rotting fruit. Harlan didn't bother slowing his pace. 2 Gretchens were already there, crouched behind overflowing bins, licking syrup from torn sweet wrappers. They froze when they saw him. Too late. A pressure rune snapped to life beneath their feet. The first went rigid instantly, invisible forces locking its limbs as the cage cracked shut. The second tried to scramble up the brick wall, shrieking, and slammed straight into a rising cage panel that also snapped shut around it mid-leap. Harlan secured both cages with quick, practiced motions. No conversation, no hesitation, no mercy. He dragged them both toward the car. When his phone vibrated, he answered without looking. "Harlan." "Harlan, listen to me," Elaine said, breathless. Gone was her careful tone from the control room. "This one's high priority." He paused. "Go on." A group sighting. Not 1 or 2, at least 5. Small green goblins, matching Gretchen profile but acting organized. Harlan's jaw clenched. "They've taken over Bramley's candy store," Elaine continued. "The big one, Central Town. They're barricaded inside and attacking anyone who gets close." "Police?" Harlan asked. "They tried," she said. "They got driven out. 3 civilians injured. Claw wounds, bites, jars thrown. They even took out the power. One officer said they moved like they were covering each other." Harlan closed the car door slowly. "How long ago?" he asked. 30 minutes. And Harlan, this isn't scavenging. They're defending territory." "That means leadership," Harlan said, "or something worse." "There's more." Witnesses reported chanting, rhythmic sounds, like they were excited. Harlan looked down the street, already mapping exits in his head. "Lock the facility down to red," he said. "No more intakes until I call it clear." "Harlan, are you going alone?" "Yes." He ended the call and climbed into the car, engine roaring to life. Candy stores were temples to Gretchens, warm, bright, endless treats stacked floor to ceiling. 5 of them inside one place wasn't a meal. It was a declaration. Harlan drove hard toward Bramley's, taser stick resting across the passenger seat, cages rattling softly behind him, and pockets filled with runes. For the first time in his career, he wasn't thinking about containment. He was thinking about elimination. Harlan reached the town in under 20 minutes. Bramley's candy store sat dark and silent at the center of the square, its cheerful painted sign cracked clean in half. Police tape fluttered uselessly in the breeze. The front windows were boarded from the inside, planks nailed at frantic angles, candy displays overturned and shoved against the glass like barricades. It looked abandoned, but Harlan knew better. He didn't touch the front door. Instead, he circled the building once, eyes scanning shadows, then slipped down the narrow steps at the side of the shop where a rusted metal door led to the basement. The lock had already been forced and stood ajar. He eased it open and descended. The basement smelled of damp stone and old sugar. Shelving lay toppled, crates smashed, wrappers drifting across the floor like fallen leaves. Harlan moved slowly, every step measured, taser stick held low, senses stretched tight. No scratching, no hissing, no noise at all. He climbed the stairs toward the shop floor, pausing just before the final step. He listened. He heard the hum of the street lamp outside, the faint creak of cooling wood. Then a voice spoke, a cruel, croaky voice. "You're quieter than they said, cage man." Harlan stepped into the shop. The lights were off, but moonlight spilled through cracks in the boards, painting the counter in pale silver. Sitting atop it, legs crossed, hands folded calmly, was a Gretchen unlike any he had ever seen. It was tall for its kind, gaunt. Its green skin was faded, almost gray, stretched tight over sharp bones. A red hat sat neatly atop its narrow head, and a matching sash crossed its waist, embroidered with symbols Harlan recognized from the deepest levels of the prison cavern. Old symbols, dangerous ones. "You talk well," Harlan said, keeping his voice flat. The Gretchen smiled, showing yellowed teeth worn smooth by time rather than sharpened by hunger. "I should," it replied. "I am an elder." Its eyes gleamed with intelligence, calm, cruel, but amused. "I've been searching for my people," the elder continued. "Vanishing one by one they have, sweet thieves disappearing into the deep dark. And everywhere I went, I heard the same name." It leaned forward slightly. "The cage man." A soft skittering sound answered its words. Harlan's gaze flicked outward just as shapes began to move. From behind shelves, from inside broken displays, from the ceiling beams, from the shadows beneath the counter. Green bodies unfolded from hiding places, eyes glowing, teeth clicking in anticipation. A dozen at least, maybe more. They surrounded him silently, cutting off every exit. The elder spread its thin hands. "This shop is ours now," it said pleasantly. "Our storehouse, our little shrine, our treasure." One of the younger Gretchens hissed eagerly. Another dragged a claw across the floor, sparks flashing. "We will kill for it," the elder said softly. "Starting with you, if we must." Harlan slowly raised the taser stick, its hum filling the candy-stinking air. "You've made a big mistake," he said. The elder chuckled, mocking him. "Oh no, cage man. It's you who made a mistake coming here tonight." Its smile widened. "We've made a statement." All around him, the Gretchens leaned in. And for the first time since the breach, Harlan realized he was no longer hunting scavengers. He was standing in occupied territory. Harlan didn't wait for permission. He snapped his wrist and scattered runes across the shop floor like coins thrown in anger. They struck tile, wood, glass, and flared. 5 Gretchens froze instantly, bodies locking mid-motion as pale light wrapped around their limbs. One was caught halfway out of a ceiling vent, another mid-leap from a shelf, jaws still open in a hungry grin. The rest screamed, Jars flew at Harlan. Hard candy shattered against the walls. Boxes of sweets burst open in the air, raining sugar and wrappers as the Gretchens shrieked and hurled anything they could grab. The elder in red threw back his head and laughed. "Look at you," he crooned, throwing chains at shadows. Harlan surged forward through the debris, taser stick cracking to life as he swung for the counter. But Redcap wasn't there. The elder blurred sideways with unnatural speed, landing behind Harlan in a single fluid motion. Claws slashed. Pain exploded across Harlan's face. He staggered back, blood warm on his cheek, vision flaring white for half a second. Redcap hissed happily. Slower than I expected. Harlan wiped his eyes with his sleeve and reached deeper into his coat. Then we changed the rules. He hurled electric pulse runes, not at the floor, but up. Dozens of them. They spun through the air, humming louder and louder. Then detonated. The shop filled with blinding white light and a thunderclap of electricity. The pulse rolled outward like a collapsing wave as Harlan dove through the basement doorway, slamming into the stairs as the blast hit. The world rang. When he pushed himself up, smoke hung thick in the air. Candy displays smoldered. Glass lay powdered across the floor. Gretchens were everywhere. On the ground, on the shelves, and the table. Everywhere. Unconscious, twitching, smoking. Except one, Redcap. He rose slowly from behind the counter, hat still perched neatly on his head, sash scorched but intact. His eyes burned with fury now, no more amusement left. "Hunter," he snarled, "you must die." Then he lunged. Harlan barely rolled aside as claws tore through the air where his head had been. He swung once, missed. Twice, grazed fabric. Redcap moved like a thing that knew every inch of its body, every weakness it had. He tried to move, but the third swing landed, cutting just below the right knee. It wasn't too deep, but it forced a stumble. He steadied himself just in time to duck another swipe. Then he countered. The taser stick struck Redcap square in the chest. The current surged through him, jolt after jolt. Redcap screamed, but not like the others. This was pure rage. This was his pride breaking. He convulsed violently, limbs locking as he collapsed against the counter and slid to the floor in a smoking heap. Harlan didn't hesitate. The cage snapped shut around the elder in seconds, runes locking in place with a deep final hum. He worked fast after that, caging Gretchen after Gretchen and hauling them to his car. 8 more were caged before the rest began to stir. Those that woke first fled the scene, scrambling through vents or smashing through boarded windows, vanishing into the night with panicked shrieks. A few were lost, but more were caught. By the time Harlan dragged the last cage out to his car, it was full, packed, rattling with captured hunger and fury. 10 on the back seats, and Redcap alone in the trunk. The facility swallowed them one by one. Redcap descended deeper than the others to level 12, chains groaning as the cage vanished into the prison cavern's shadowed depths. Elaine watched from the platform, pale but steady. "That should help," she said quietly. Harlan nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "It'll get quieter now, I hope." He didn't say safe. "With those last 11, we've recovered 49 so far, which is almost half of what we lost," Elaine said excitedly, then became shy. "Good," Harlan groaned. "I'm going to bed." Elaine watched him leave, then returned to her notes. Far below, the cages locked into place. And somewhere out there in the dark, the Gretchens that escaped, although scattered, were already gossiping about the sound of the airburst and the name of the cage man who made it. Well, he didn't get them all back, but that was a pretty good start. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all the jazz. Until next time, peace.